Who was C.I. Scofield and why does this matter? This man was responsible for shifting the course of Bible interpretation to that of dispensationalism in America. And right out of the gate, I'm going to say that this shift has been very problematic for the church in America. C.I. Scofield published Rightly Dividing the Word of Truth in 1888, founded a Bible correspondence course in 1890, and released the Scofield Reference Bible in 1909, which has influenced millions since. And all of this despite his early controversies. What early controversies, you may ask? That is what I want to touch on because I feel so many Christians blindly trust man when they should not. So who was C.I. Scofield? What I'm about to share is the evidence-based, often overlooked reality of C.I. Scofield's real legacy. Scofield was first known to be a lawyer and politician. Later, as a prosecuting attorney, Scofield was accused of taking bribes from railroad interest. In 1878, he was arrested and jailed in St. Louis for multiple cases of forgery. One specific of forging the name of his own sister on a promissory note to secure $900. By 1880, Scofield became the pastor of the Hyde Park Congregational Church in St. Louis, Missouri. In 1883, Scofield abandoned his wife and 2 daughters, and she divorced him in 1883 on grounds of desertion. Scofield was then ordained in October of 1883 when he moved to Dallas to lead a small mission church, which grew into the First Congregational Church of Dallas and was later renamed Scofield Memorial Church. He soon married Hetty Hall von Wartz, who was a member of his church congregation in March of 1884. So let's just stop and filter this man's character through the lens of Scripture. He was a sinner, as we all are. He made many errors, as we all have. But not everyone is a shepherd of the flock of Christ. That is not a responsibility for all men. The Apostle Paul tells us clearly what a qualified pastor looks like. 1 Timothy 3:1-7 says, "It is a trustworthy statement. If any man aspires to the office of an overseer, it is a fine work he desires to do. An overseer then must be above reproach, the husband of one wife, temperate, prudent, respectable, hospitable, able to teach, not addicted to wine, but gentle, peaceable, free from the love of money. He must be one who manages his own household well, keeping his children under control with all dignity. But if a man does not know how to manage his own household, how will he take care of the church of God, and not a new convert, so that he will not become conceited and fall into the condemnation incurred by the devil? And he must have a good reputation with those outside the church, so that he will not fall into reproach and the snare of the devil." By biblical standards, C.I. Scofield would be disqualified to assume a role in church leadership. And he assumed position and stature by keeping his secret life from his congregates and the world. And then he wrote books and a whole study Bible that has infiltrated the church in the West with a doctrine that has led many into great deception. And why did Scofield push this doctrine? Because he believed that Christians that came before him throughout centuries of the Christian church, including the first apostles, were in the dark about future events facing Israel and the Christian church. This New Age interpreter convinced many that he was the enlightened teacher of the modern era. My question is, what about the most basic teachings of Christianity? How was the gospel of no avail? And now, the Scofield Study Bible, published by Oxford University Press, once linked to the Rothschilds, pushes a theology shaped by John Darby. Darby's family owned Leap Castle, Ireland's most haunted, where 150 bodies were found in the cellars and satanic rituals that took place. Darby's writings used occult terms, and he was tied to secret societies. And it was Darby who worked for the Rothschilds and the East India Company, and he was Scofield's mentor. So what does all this tell you? Christians should reevaluate what they believe and where those teachings originated. A man that abandoned his wife and children and failed to interpret basic moral imperatives in his own life, such as fidelity, responsibility, and integrity, shouldn't be trusted with interpreting biblical theology, as his personal scandals, including forgery, bribery, and desertion, cast doubt on his character and ability to handle Scripture without bias or hypocrisy. I leave you with a quote from the late George Mueller. He said, "I am a constant reader of my Bible, and I soon found that what I was taught to believe did not always agree with what my Bible said. I came to see that I must either part company with John Darby or my precious Bible. And I chose to cling to my Bible and part from Mr. Darby." I genuinely urge anyone who's on this theological and eschatological path to do the same, because this path is leading you to a false truth and a false hope.